In 1984, retired lounge singer Willie Scott released 800 pages of what was intended to be Volume 1 of her biography. Critics called it bloated, self-indulgent, and a chore to read, except 250 of the most batshit crazy pages ever committed to ink. She recounts a story of her going to India and freeing hundreds of children out of an Hindu cult with the aid of a young Chinese boy and an American archaeologist. My name's Leslie Morris.
My name's John Noonan.
And this week on Fantastic Histories, we're looking at Dr. Henry Jones, India's white savior. Okay, John, so after her biography comes out, everyone wants to know who on earth is this Dr. Henry Jones? And eventually he got tracked down, and boy, he did not disappoint. He was this old, war-torn adventurer that had an eye patch, and you know what? No fucks left to give.
Angry pirate. Sounds like an angry pirate.
And he was popular on, shows like Donahue, where he would talk about what you would think to be classified information. About fighting Nazis and finding religious artifacts. But I have to point out, he fought Nazis, but he did it without being an enlisted soldier in World War II. He fought them on his own time.
Oh, so much for the tolerant left.
And he even had an incident with Adolf Hitler, but he was pretending to be a Nazi at the time. But anyway...
This is amazing already.
Well, no. See, the thing is, everyone loved him up until he told this story about aliens and surviving a nuclear bomb by hiding in the fridge, and everyone was like, geez, are you sure you're on your medication, mate?
Oh, but, okay.
But what happened, this did inspire people to research his life. And a lot of what he said turned out to be factually true. And I thought the early part of his life would be hard to cover, but if anything... there's too much information. We'll just get into it. But if you're not really a super fan of this guy and you don't want to hear everything about his early life, I suggest you go to this time code, around the 40-minute mark, where we'll just talk about the Indian part of his life. Because some of this is a little bit tedious. I won't cover everything. And I've glossed over so much information, and there still feels like there's too much. Okay.
Is this why we haven't spoken for at least 3 weeks?
I've been going in deep, John.
Jesus. Okay.
Okay.
Basically, click, I'm seatbelted in, let's do this. Oh, Christ, he's locked the doors. No!
So, Dr. Henry Walton Jones Jr. was born on the 1st of July, 1899, in Princeton, New Jersey, to Scottish-born professor of medieval studies, Henry Jones, and his wife, Anne. Now, as they both have the same name, I'm going to refer to them as Junior and Senior.
Okay.
Junior had a sister, Susie, who died at an early age. When he was still in the crib, Henry's parents introduced him to an Alaskan Malamute pup named Indiana. They quickly bonded, and his dog was a friend and companion through the earliest years of his life. There's so many. I'm so dyslexic, and this episode has so many names and dates, and also. I am so Anglo-Saxon, so
So we have to put an apology up front in terms of how we pronounce names or anything like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not because I'm racist. I'm just dumb.
So if you're affected by any of the topics that I raised in today's episode, you can seek out some support online. Thanks for the heads up there, Leslie. Go.
Not with us. By 1905, young Henry had adopted the name of his beloved dog for himself, although his father would refer to him as Junior well into his adult life. Now, we won't really cover his relationship with the father, but that's his father to a T.
That's, wow, I'm still going from he took his dog's name.
Well, we'll see. He doesn't really have a strong father figure.
Okay. I mean, Indiana sounds good. Thank God the dog wasn't called Cuddles or something. You know?
Poochie. And throughout his life, he was really just left to his own devices. When Indy was 7 years old, he first developed a fascination for the bullwhip when he saw a whip act in a traveling circus. He was a restless child, and he just, we all know this kid. He preferred to spend time with his dog, playing baseball with friends, or conducting scientific experiments rather than being in school. Some of his early experiments is one time he tried to break the land speed record, and another occasion he attempted to send his dog to the moon.
I have nothing to add to that. I have nothing to add to that.
He was a big fan of baseball, and, he took piano lessons. And, it seems that when they were in the US, they didn't have a lavish lifestyle. They didn't live in a big house, but they used all their money to travel and better themselves.
Okay.
So, following the success of his academic books, Senior was invited on a 2-year-long tour around the world of schools and universities, which started in 1908. So Junior wouldn't be losing out in his studies. Senior decided to hire his old Oxford University tutor, Miss Helen Margaret Seymour. As such, their first port of call was her home in England. Oh, and FYI, I'm going to be throwing so much shit in your direction, John.
What?
The English do not come out looking good in this episode.
Mate, the English haven't been looking good since 2018. So,
And though you how long have you been in Australia for?
8 years.
Well, I'm doing that Australian thing. You could live here for 30 years, but if you could be a citizen, but if you come from somewhere else, we will remind you. Even a similar country like the UK. Okay, so their first port of call was England. She was living in the city of Oxford. Miss Seymour was introduced to the boy, then declined Senior's offer. She believed him to be too young, nor did Junior wanted to see any more of her.
What, did he try to send her to the moon as well?
Probably. Well, she could tell he was a bit of a handful.
Oh, a little scallywag. Oh.
Senior was determined to have the best for his son, and Seymour eventually accepted, and this became a 2-year string.
He calls himself after the dog. He doesn't want to talk to tutors. Oh, I'm done.
But now this is good for him. He gets all his energy out. Now I'm going to break these next section into his childhood, his adolescence, and his adult life. So their tour started off in Egypt, where they joined up with Miss Seymour's ex-pupil, T.E. Lawrence, which we all know for being a famous British archaeologist, and the fact that he might have lived in Arabia.
I've heard rumours.
And it was there that Junior first became interested in archaeology. And Lawrence really urged him not to do it for money, but for the good of the world. And they would have a remarkably long friendship. And he would pop up at all the important parts of Junior's early years.
How fortuitous.
On a dig, they had an incident where several people were killed and a jackal headpiece stolen. Put a pin in this one. From there, they travelled to Florence, Paris. Africa, where Junior meets Teddy Roosevelt, where... Oh, fuck, I can't even say...
Ted Roosevelt.
Where Junior meets Teddy Roosevelt... Where Junior meets Teddy Roosevelt...
Roosevelt.
Are you
talking about the president?
Yeah.
Roosevelt.
Where Junior meets Teddy Roosevelt. Yeah. 1910, they go to Varanasi, India, where he first learns about the Hindu god Shiva. Definitely put a pin in that one. By April, they're in Russia, where he runs away from his father to meet an 80-year-old runaway Leo Tolstoy.
Question from the back. This is glossing over his history?
Yeah, like... I'm on page 4. We have 19 more pages to go, and then we get to the actual podcast.
And that's a real big lock on that door as well. I'm really struggling to opening it.
And they got to Greece by April. And then back home to Princeton by August. At this point, the timeline's a little bit unclear, but it seems like... his father started lecturing at Boston University, and him and Miss Seymour, they would just travel around a lot. And does he sound like a little privileged bastard at this point?
Do you remember how we talked about that old detective Sherlock Holmes, and we were talking about the hat and stuff, and saying, yeah, he sounds so privileged.
Yeah.
So privileged.
Well, if you haven't hated him, he's a good spot. In early 1912, Miss Seymour comes into wealth following the passing of her cousin and her son. With this newfound prosperity, she seeks to repay the Joneses for the opportunity to see the world. And they did quite a bit on that trip. I didn't even talk about it. So she invites the Joneses back to her family home. But Senior, and there's so much information about this, all his life, Senior was obsessed with finding the Holy Grail, which was the cup Christ drank from at the Last Supper. This meant that only Junior could attend. And it's a good thing you mentioned our episode about Sherlock, because guess who they go have high tea with?
Einstein.
He was in the last episode.
Sherlock Holmes.
Who in the last episode?
You've lost me.
Sir?
Sir? What?
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Wait. Can I take this one again from the top, please?
So they were invited for high tea with...
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle?
Exactly.
Seamless.
And plan their trip back to the United States on the Titanic.
In hindsight, Leslie, I feel that was probably one of the biggest mistakes they've ever made.
But the little bastard survived okay.
Oh, he's like a leech.
So later that year, tragedy strikes the Joneses' family when his mother, Anna, contracts the scarlet fever and dies. They soon relocate to Utah, and this is where the relationship between Senior and Junior just ends. It's strained, and their problem is they're the same person.
And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon. Little boy. Sorry.
Senior was very much in love with Anna, so I think to get over the death, he just withdrew and just got lost in this world of finding the Holy Grail because it's the only way he could cope. And he started lecturing again. And from what I can tell, Junior was pretty much allowed to do whatever he wanted during the summer, and he mostly traveled.
Because he didn't get to do much before then.
Yeah. He has to go out and see the world. And this leads up to the summer of 1912, which really cemented the person he would be moving forward and would really set out the fashions he would wear for the rest of his life. But to truly go forward, John,
yes,
we have to go back a few hundred years and talk about the Cross of Colorado. It's a religious cross that would later be associated with Spanish conquistadors. And there's evidence to suggest that the artifact was originally a smaller brass or gold alloy crucifix from the 7th or 8th century that contains a relic of the true cross, which was the cross that Jesus was crucified on, in the center. Now, the full history of who owned it, who stole it, blah, 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 it's not that important. As much as you just need to know at some point the cross was boxed and hidden away on a burial site within a cave complex in what would become the U.S. state of Utah, and it fell into the legend of the Cross of Colorado.
Ooh, and Leslie once again needs to be reminded that glossing over does not mean what you think it means.
Centuries later, the stories that matter I'm going to talk about. Century later, an unknown gang found out about it and dug it up in the caves. And, we don't actually know any of the names of the gang members for obvious reasons that I'll talk about later.
Okay.
The man who hired the gang, we're going to call Panama Hat.
Nice. Like it. Panama Hat. Like Deep Throat. Panama Hat.
And the man who led the gang, we're going to call Fedora, because obviously that's what they were wearing.
And not because he's an incel or anything like that.
Everything's going okay for them until two nosy scouts, Junior and his friend Herman, stumble upon the gang looting and discovered that they had the cross.
Does that not sound like a detective novel? Like when you're like the Hardy Boys? Junior and Herman.
Yeah, where only one of them is useful. Let me tell you, no one's doing a podcast about Herman. Got diabetes and died.
No, I'm not laughing at the diabetes or the death.
Yeah, you are. So, Junior recognized the artifact, and, he held firm to one belief. It belonged in a museum. So Junior sent Herman to go get help while he attempted to seize the cross out from under Fedora's men. And he just wasn't very good at adventuring. And they spotted him and they chased him. And this part is bonkers. It involves a chase through a circus train, which cemented his love of whips and fear of snakes. He ends up going home.
Don't kink shame him, okay? Do not kink shame him.
It all ends up with him going back home. And although Herman bought the sheriff, the lawman returned the cross to Panama Hat. However, Fedora admired Junior's attempt to take the cross. He said, today you lost, but you don't have to like it.
Ah, that's beautiful.
He, gave him a bit of encouragement and gave him his hat as he left. And because Junior was lacking any strong father figures, Junior would dress like this man for the rest of his days.
How deprived of love was he?
Which,
Jesus.
Basically, he had a fedora hat, a jacket, a grey shirt, and, he bought his own bullwhip to the piece.
Thank God he wasn't chased by one of the clowns on that circus train then. You lost this time, but you don't have to like it.
So around this time, Miss Seymour comes to the United States for a visit, and also around this time, he possibly meets Billy the Kid when he helps recovers an amulet with radium, which was stolen from the institution of Marie Curie in Paris.
This is such a mad life.
Strap in. 1913, Senior is lecturing at Georgetown University in medieval literature. And now this summer, Junior would meet two lifelong friends. Sadly, neither apply to the story.
So I don't have to put a pin in those ones then, now?
They're worth a mention. So there's this guy called Marcus Brodie who studied with Senior, and they became friends in 1905, and Brodie would assist Senior in his search for the Holy Grail. And like Senior, Marcus would bounce around the country doing work, and he watched Junior grow up. They knew each other, but they didn't have a real friendship until this summer. Mm-hmm. And Brodie, from what I read, comes across as a really nice, if not a touch, eccentric man, that he understood the relationship dynamic between Senior and Junior and knew that, Junior needed just a little bit more support than what he was given. So he offered him to go on an expedition to Egypt where they recovered the Ring of Osiris. And in this trip, they really bonded. And, in later on in life, he probably was more of a father figure than his actual father was. Mm-hmm. And I also think it had to do with Brodie's wife died shortly after. Didn't have much family from the UK. So, family's what you make it. So when they're in Egypt, they were helped by somebody on their expedition, a young and jovial boy by the name of Salah Mohammed Faisal Kal-Iyar. On this trip, they also crossed swords with a German spy and narrowly escaped the last major outbreak of the bubonic plague. So Senior and Brodie actually fell out in this time, but all four men, Brodie, Senior, Junior, Sulla, reconnected later on in life to find the Holy Grail. Because, of course.
Well, that's actually harmonious. That's beautiful. It's nice, though.
Out of all those four men, the relationship was between Junior and Brodie.
Mm-hmm.
That was the strongest.
Yeah.
Mostly because Sulla lived in Egypt.
Long-distance relationships, man, they're hard. You didn't have Facebook. You had no Instagram. Yeah. It's tough.
So here's a fun fact. Junior and Brodie ended up working at Marshall College together. Junior as a lecturer and Brodie as the dean of students. Brodie passed away in 1952, and this affected Junior deeply.
Okay.
So he ended up getting a bronze statue of Brodie erected on the campus, which was damaged in 1957 when it was hit by a car of KGB agents that were in pursuit of Junior and his estranged son. Brodie's head fell off, smashed through the windshield, and winded up in one of the agents' laps.
So a fitting tribute to a loving man, just
helping his friend out even after death. Then they moved to England because Senior is lecturing at Cambridge University, and Junior goes to boarding school where he has this King Arthur side quest. John, not enough time. I'm not going to go into it. What about this one? On Christmas 1913, him and his mate ended up on a research trip to Stonehenge, where they soon discovered that somebody was trying to sabotage the dig, as they were confronted by a magic-wielding German spy. Junior and his mate barely escape injury with some questionable help from the ancient stones themselves and the power of the rising sun focused through the saboteur's magic crown.
That's an episode of Scooby-Doo.
Don't have time to go in that one, John. You know why? Because they soon relocate back to Utah. And then they go
I've just seen this red line going across a map of the world, just going back and forth, back and forth.
They go to Greece. And there he investigates a knife, which is believed to be linked to the legend of Cain and Abel. 1914. All this shit gets cut short because they're in Europe.
Wait, I know this
the
one.
The assassination of...
Franz Ferdinand, the band Franz Ferdinand.
Yeah, the band. Is that an Australian band?
It's a British band.
It's a British band.
They wore great little school blazers, and then they went serious, and no one liked them anymore.
The band Franz Ferdinand gets assassinated. So they get out of there, and they go to China because... So later on that year, Junior and Senior travel back to India when his mate puts on an ancient tiger eye amulet. He turns into a were-tiger. No time to explain, John. And oh my goodness, he's now in adolescence. 10 more pages to go. Okay, so he's in high school. He also meets Thomas Edison. But more importantly, his date, Nancy Stepmire, chose to distill gas with him. But he doesn't get lucky because, I'm going to tell you about how he loses his virginity later. Well, I'll put in that one then. You guys want to jump to time code, whatever. There you go. Okay, sorry, it's going to be a rough episode of Fantastic Issues. Oh, you have no idea. Sorry. Junior knocks off all this normal person shit.
Glad you finished off that sentence.
He quits high school and he goes back to having more adventures. Remember that jackal headpiece I mentioned when he was in Egypt?
Can I unpin it from the board?
Yes. He finds it during a family visit in New Mexico, where he ends up getting captured by, but ends up fighting for, Pancho Villa. The headpiece was stolen by a man who at the time went under the name Claw, but you don't need to know anything about him because he ended up dying. He doesn't come up again. Junior ends up, around this time, he ends up meeting his best friend of this period, a guy called Remy Beaumont. I don't know how to say his last name.
Is he French, by chance?
Yes, he is. How could you tell?
I don't know. Subtle.
So they would be best friends for the next couple of years. Around this time, T. Lawrence convinces him to return to Europe and fight in World War One. So they go to London, and Indiana dies shortly after. Like the dog.
Oh, okay, the dog. I was going to say, well, good night, everybody. So next week's episode, we'll be talking about...
In London, they enlist in the Belgian army. Junior enlists under the name Henry, but with an I, Defense. Henry, anyway, that's a fact that doesn't ever go anywhere.
That died.
Remy quickly gets married, and Junior gets caught up in a romance with a suffragette named Vicky. And they attend this dinner party with Winston Churchill, and Junior ends up proposing to Vicky, and she was like, I don't need no man.
Oh.
She declines, and then he heads off to Europe.
He did not put a ring on it.
And Junior has this really kind of interesting relationship with women. He had a thing for a Nazi at one point, which we won't go into.
Oh.
Miss Seymour, who at this point is his only parental figure, and seemed like a genuinely nice human being, sees them off before they start fighting in Europe. Oh, there's so much army stuff.
You sound defeated by your own research. Come on, you can do this. Push through.
Okay, now, this is where shit gets real. He's now fighting as a soldier in World War One. Junior's Belgian company is devastated in Flanders, and all their officers die. He quickly gets promoted to corporal. He fights in the Battle of Somme. At the time, was one of the deadliest battles ever fought, with over 1 million soldiers lost their lives. the British lost over 60,000 soldiers in one day, despite the fact they outnumbered the Germans 6-1. Now, John, this might shock you.
Shock me, Leslie. Shock me, baby.
Junior had some initial problems having to work with others.
Did he now?
Who would have
Little Lord
thought?
Fauntleroy, who got everything he wanted.
But here's the thing. He could have become that person.
He's not sounding great so far. Keep going.
Through World War One,
Yeah.
it was a trial of fire because he was used to doing stuff his own way. But because he's not an idiot, he had to adapt to literally survive. In one battle, the Germans launched a counterattack, and reinforcements failed to arrive to save the Bengal unit, and Junior was taken prisoner. He makes several attempts to escape, but is caught each time, and is eventually sent to a maximum security prison. There he meets Charles de Gaulle, who's a future French general, who's impressed with his moxie. Much like Fundura, he's like, "You got something, kid." And together, they
You lost this time, but you don't have to like it. Why does everyone keep telling me that?
No, he's like, "We will not lose today." And together, they hatch an escape plan. Utilizing the coffins of dead prisoners, de Gaulle is ultimately captured, but Junior escapes, and his luck doesn't hold out for long. He joins what he thinks is a German road-mending group, but it turns out to be a workforce of British POWs that have been taken to Berlin. Junior's caught during a roll call, and this is kind of very indicative of who he is. Mm-hmm. He feels like he's constantly 30 seconds away from getting killed at all times. In order to survive, he just has to make shit up. And we'll very much see that when he goes to India.
Classic strategy.
It works,
I'm not saying it didn't.
Commit to a bit. He convinced the camp leader that he was actually a double agent for the Germans, and they sent him ahead to Berlin.
Such balls.
And from there, he finds the American embassy, and then, then he's quickly demoted.
Hey,
And he becomes a courier in the trenches because, he really should have got executed for this. He got off very lightly. Basically, he destroyed orders that would have forced soldiers into a suicide attack against two Big Berthas. You probably don't know the name of Big Bertha, but you've seen pictures of these things. They're these, they're huge 422 millimeter houses, they're just massive guns.
Yeah.
And according to French gunnery sergeant, the Big Bertha took over 100 men to load and fire and used about a 2,000-pound shell. So he's bumped down back to a shit kicker. In October of that year, he's allowed shore leave and he goes to Paris, where he becomes a man.
Ooh.
He loses his virginity and then falls in love with the famous double spy and exotic dancer, Mata Hari.
Ooh.
Do you know?
I've heard the Mata Hari, yes.
Well, things did not go well for them. She was arrested, convicted, and executed by the French for being a German spy the following year.
That's pretty, that's a way of ending a relationship, really.
You can also see why this guy is a bit of a loner. There's more to come, John. Junior washes his hands of her and returns to his unit.
And actually, on the advice of Matahari, he's transferred to Africa. Oh my goodness, he has this side quest with a unit of really old soldiers, and I'm not going to go into it. And then he goes to Africa for a little bit, I'm not going to go into it.
And then he joins the French Secret Service, and he has a run with the Red Baron. I'm not going into it.
And then we're very much at the end of his service in World War I at this point.
From there, he goes on a secret mission to destroy the only known prototype of a plane known as the foiled giant triplane, which you've seen pictures of it. It looks like it's a huge triple-decker plane.
Yes.
Yes.
The plane was designed so to be flown from Germany to New York, and it had an enormous wingspan. He destroyed the only known prototype. From there, he goes into missions into Sweden, Austria, and Barcelona.
And then in Russia, he's caught up in the middle of the Bolsheviks uprising. And then
He goes to France. And you know what?
this isn't the most important thing to mention, but it involves Australia. So of course I'm going to talk about it.
Oh, we get to talk about Australia for a bit. Well, this is better than shitting on England.
Junior is ordered to aid the British against the Turks in freeing Jerusalem. False documents are planted and a sting operation is set up, with Junior being sent to Beersheba with another agent to obtain defense information, the Turks become convinced that Gaza is the objective rather than Beersheba. And in their absence, the Australian Light Horse Brigade takes Beersheba. We have a slightly different version of accounts, but that's okay. And honestly, we probably should do a whole episode about this. So there was 2 attacks leading up to this in which 10,000 soldiers died. And do you know what the Allies' main problem was?
It's going to be like a fence, isn't it?
No. Their main problem was they weren't 400 Australian dudes on horseback with swords. Everyone else was trying to use guns and shit. And we rocked up and said, hey, we'll use the most antiquated technology available to us with the least amount of people. Essentially, they were allowed to do this because everyone else thought, yeah, sure, why not? It's not the worst idea. Why the fuck do you need a gun when you have a horse and a sword?
It's one of my strongest mirrors.
They have rifles. You just can't use it on the back of a fucking horse. So, and they ended up capturing the city. They captured over 1,000 soldiers and at only 31 lives lost. And you know what? Do you think this fucking country would celebrate such a badass effort? No, we would rather fucking bang on about how we got our asses handed to us at Gallipoli. Do you think we ever fucking talk about John Monash? He literally ended World War I early. Fuck no, even though we named a shit ton of stuff after him. Because you know what? John Monash was an engineer. It doesn't fit into the iconography of what we like to perpetuate about this country. He was an educated man, and he wasn't a fucking larrikin, but he fucking changed the world.
Leslie, can I just get I'm going to need that soapbox back. Okay, I'm going to need that soapbox back. If you could just get off it, please, for a second.
Okay.
Thanks.
This all leads up to 1918. I mentioned this mission just because it's a little bit interesting.
Because everything else has been really dull. This bit.
Oh, you just wait, John. You just wait.
After Austrian POW camp is attacked, Eugene is sent to Romania to find a separatist general believed to be responsible. He's good to send the castle and locate the missing soldiers.
While they're trying to leave, they meet the master of the castle, and Junior experiences another brush with the supernatural. The master is revealed to be a vampire. Vlad the Impaler.
He faces soldiers from Vlad's influences, and Alfonso allows them to rest in peace. From there, he goes for a mission, and this is more important than you think.
He basically finds himself in the middle of a dick measuring contest.
Right.
For the affections of a woman who turns out was engaged to another man, so it doesn't even matter.
Inconsequential.
In this period, he's caught in a shelling attack and spent some time in hospital recovering. But this doesn't slow the horn dog down.
Oh.
He's back into a mission in Istanbul where he falls in love with an American schoolteacher who he lies about being a spy because you have to. And when it's revealed, she's into him anyway. But, because, they're on the same side. But, she's mistakenly shot by a double agent who Junior hunts down and kills. And also, this kind of feeds into why he's a loner.
No, it totally does. It totally does. This is too much trauma for
he's
one man.
He's barely out of his mid-20s at this point.
This is better men have crumbled after this. I get upset if I lose my glasses. This is just...
So, in October 1918, Miss Seymour falls ill and passes away. Just before World War I ends, Junior doesn't get to see her in time, but she leaves a letter just basically saying that she hopes he uses his talent for the good of mankind and he should finish his education and reconcile with his father.
In May of 1919, he sends to France to be a translator at the Paris Peace Conference. He gets a chance to meet up with his mate, C.S. Eliot, once again, who they hear a sensitive speech regarding this Vietnamese woman.
Have you ever heard of this guy called Ho Chi Minh?
I'm aware of his work.
So that brings us to 1920, where he's now studying at the University of Chicago. There, he strikes up a friendship with an archaeologist and Egyptologist called Abner Ravingwood. And he, like a few other people in his life, is a father figure to him, a mentor. And like his real father, who was obsessed with the Holy Grail, Abner was obsessed with finding the Ark of the Covenant, which was the basically the container that the Jewish people put in the Ten Commandments. And
Sure.
It also had a few bits and bobs.
Sure. Sounds inconsequential.
But of course, he has no interest in studying, and he gets caught up with the jazz scene.
Oh, jazz.
And he takes up the soprano saxophone. And around this time, he becomes a normal person, John. Just a normal person.
Just, playing his saxophone, taking heroin.
And he gets a job at a restaurant, and when his boss dies, his boss is Big Jim Colosimo. When he's killed, him and his roommate, a young Elliot Ness, and Ernest Hemingway, they solved the case.
Good on them.
Just, normal people stuff. Jobs and friends.
I remember my gap year. We all do it,
Of course, it's all connected to Al Capone, and they're stonewalled by the corruption in City Hall.
I shake my fist at them.
On summer break, he goes to New York, where he gets a backstage job on Broadway, and then this leads to him working in Hollywood for a bit, because, of course...
What, science? I don't know. Yeah, sure.
He works with Erich von Stroh on the film Foolish Wives, and they fucking hate each other. So then he goes on to a location shoot with John Ford, and, he's hanging around with all his cronies, including this old gunman called Wyatt Earp.
Jeez.
So we're now heading into his adult years, but we're still 13 years away from the events of the actual story of this podcast.
I think I'm done. I'm done with this podcast. I'm leaving now.
Okay,
Go.
so I'm just going to rip through all of this.
Go.
In ancient Mayan artifact known as the Jade Sphere. There she's involved in a plot to overthrow King Constantine, and Junior is unbeknownst set up to take the blame of the king's murder. He also acquires his first bullwhip. This will come important later.
Pin.
Now, okay, while studying, he meets this guy called Rene Emil Balak, and these guys are fucking frenemies. And Balak dies when the Jewish god melts his face off. John.
Yes.
No time to explain.
No time. Sure.
In 1905, he completes his undergraduate studies at Sorbonne, and he's hired in his first job as a professor at London University, where he teaches a summer archaeology course. At this point, Abner Ravenwood comes back in his life, and while trying to find the Ark of the Covenant, he discovers the Staff of Ra. And around this time, he starts having a relationship with his youngest daughter, Marion, which he would later marry when they're both super old.
That's cute. Aww.
And she's the mother of his estranged son, I mentioned before, on the motorbike in the KGB.
Who then knocked the head off the statue of the man that he was friends with through the course of his life as a lecturer.
So, okay, they break up.
Yeah.
So, isn't this a great time to rebound and get married?
Yeah, totally. Always. Why wouldn't you do that?
Oh, yeah. You think everything I've talked about his previous relationship with women, you think that's bad?
It's not great.
Okay, you hold my beer. Deidre Campbell was a student at the London University, and her mother Joanne was in the archaeology department. Deidre got Junior's interest with a paper exploring the historical underpinnings of the Merlin legend. The adventure that followed led the pair to Stonehenge, where a man is a man. And he was like, let me tell you a story. I was once here at Christmas.
Like a really bored one of those students the second year of university. Oh, let me tell you what I did in my gap year. I was at Stonehenge and I fought druids.
At Stonehenge, they have a fatal confrontation with Deirdre's secret half-brother from a different father, Adrian Powell, who's a member of Parliament and the chief of the mysterious order of the Hyperboreans, aka he was a fucking druid. The mother, Joanne, is killed to prolong exposure to chlorine gas. So their relationship blossomed, and they're married in March 1926. They go on a few trips together. They go to a trip to Rio de Janeiro, where Junior is shot. He goes to New York to recover, and then Marcus Brody sends them to South Africa to expose a blood cult. It's complicated, John. No time. On the way, their plane crashes, and Deidre dies. The loss destroyed him emotionally. Not only was he the sole survivor of the plane crash, most of their final memories together were gone. He just could not remember. And on top of that, he could not remember enough details to go back to the site of the crash.
Oh.
That shit fucks you up.
Yeah, that'll do it.
And then I think after that, he just becomes... When we meet him in the story, he's not in a good place.
Okay.
I think this is the start of him just being a bit broken and a bit disconnected from the world.
Okay.
Because enough
Understandably so.
is enough. He's soon released from his job at the London University. He returns to Chicago, where he's off to find Noah's Ark and Mount Ararat. And then, this year, the most important character in this story is born. Mr. Round. Short Round in Shanghai, China.
Ooh.
Put a pin in that. We'll come to that later.
Okay, so 1928, he studied teaching in a small New England college.
And him and Marcus, at this point, they have more to do with each other. They have this adventure over a unicorn horn. No time to explain, John.
God damn it.
They have an adventure involving a ghost ship. No time to explain, John.
God damn it.
They have an adventure involving a UFO. No time, John.
God
No
damn it.
time.
And he bounces back between England and France. I won't go into any of these details, but he goes from there, goes to the Andes Mountains, runs beginning back to the Himalayas.
Back to the Himalayas, Mongolia, where he's trying to find a lost dinosaur.
Okay, Brody's much more involved at this point. Then he goes to the Antarctic and back to...
Egypt to recover some stolen mummies. It turns out they were stolen by the cult of Mara, who was trying to bring them back to life.
Then he goes to the Oregon from the Green Cave, the Egyptian desert, to the Martha Sea, searching for an underwater shrine of Shiva.
Find the shrine, and it's filled with pearls, but he loses all the treasure to a giant octopus that destroys the ship. He runs into the last living family of a Roman family of Dracula that beat to the end of the blood the Impaler, and then he runs into his first Nazis. When he was hired to find the lost Chinese treasure at the heart of the dragon, with the most powerful power that's supposed to give their own to control minds, the Nazis would come to join this land, but not now, John. We're done. We are done. We are up to the actual story of this podcast.
I can't remember who my father is anymore. I don't know. So it's fair to say his life was simple. One without hazard. A calm life. One that any person would want.
Okay, John.
Leslie.
We're finally coming to the story of our podcast.
Ooh.
But first, to tell the story,
Oh, God damn it.
we have to go back to maybe before the beginning of time.
Again, you really don't understand what glossing over is, do you? Come on. Beginning of time. Let's do this.
Where Brahma, who's a Hindu god, you might know him as that old guy with 3 heads and a beard. Well,
well.
3 beards, just not one.
Just 3 heads, 1 massive beard between them.
And Vishnu, who's a blue god with 4 arms, much like us humans, they were in a classic dick measuring contest.
Oh.
And they're arguing who is the most powerful. And out of nowhere, a blazing pillar struck the earth. Its branches extended deep into the earth and high up into the sky. Wanting to get the bottom, and it gets the top of this, Brahma turns into a goose and flies up, and Vishnu turns into a boar and digs deep under the earth.
Ooh.
Both unsuccessful, they rejoin to see Lord Shiva come out of an opening of the pillar. Seeing his great power, they accepted that he was going to be the 3rd power to rule the universe.
Ooh.
Okay, let's fast forward
Okay.
a couple of 100 years before our story begins, when Shankara, a priest of Shiva, sought enlightenment and ascended to the peak of Mount Khalsa. There, Shiva rewarded him with a gift of 5 stones in which to combat evil. The diamonds in the stone would glow when the stones were placed near each other to symbolize the pillar, to symbolize his birth. Shankara used the stones to convert many in India to the worship of Shiva. After his death, however, the stones became lost, scattered by war and sold by mercenaries over hundreds of years. By the 1930s, 2 Shankara stones sat buried beneath the palace of Peacock, while a second pair managed to fall into the possession of a Thuggy high priest's son by the name of Molaram, and the last of the 5 ended up in a small village called Maypur, located in the northwest section of India in the Peacock province. It was found in a river and retrieved by the Maypur people and brought happiness and prosperity to the village. And they call it a Sivalinga, which is the town's Ingram. And Ingram is basically an abstract representation of Shiva.
Right, okay.
And it's often phallic. Can you please put a pin in that? It had 3 notches on the side, representing the 3 levels of the universe according to the beliefs. I Wikipedia'd. I'm genuinely confused. What the... It's Yeah, it's like a lot of this Hindu. I get most of it, but just a lot of it's a little bit too.
Particularly if you go, so you didn't go to theologians or anything like that, or any just Wikipedia.
Yeah. Now, like a lot of villages, this had two leaders: a chieftain who more so looked after practical affairs, and Mahan, who was the shaman, the spiritual leader of the Maypur village, and a devotee to Shiva. The village itself was at peace until rumours about strange activities began emanating from around Peacock, which used to be the old power base for the Thuggis. While the British had destroyed the cult's temple in the 19th century, Mahan didn't believe their assurance that the cult itself was gone, and he was proven correct in the 1930s when a band of raiders attacked his village, led by a thuggy high priest called Molaram.
From now on, you always have to pronounce it like this. Name gets brought up again, you're saying it like that. From the
Molaram!
There we go.
Mahan confronted Molaram
Yeah.
when he attempted to take their Shakara stone from the Maypur shrine. The thuggy priest ignored Mahan's warning to leave and attempted to tear out the shaman's heart with his bare hands. But Maha protected himself with his own incantation. He prayed to Shiva for assistance, and Molaram was hurled back with a blast of heat. Standing over him, Maha again told Molaram to leave, which he did, laughing as he walked away. When Maha turned back to the shrine, the stone was gone. He directed his son Sinju, one of Maypur's few warrior castes, to assemble some men and give chase, but by that time the attacking force had got away. Maypur was spiritually drained, and Mahan prayed for guidance. Over the following days, all the wells dried up. The people's crops died, and the fields became barren with apparent supernatural speed, and all their livestock perished. During this time, emissaries from Molaram...
Still gonna make me laugh.
No, let's be serious. Like this. So, then Molaram's men return, assuring the villagers that those who worship Kali would never go without food or water. He was then chased away. But at this time, the villagers, they were thinking about moving away. Mahan told them to persevere, for Shiva would reward them for their faith, though things were about to get much worse. A month after the stone's theft, a fire broke out in the fields, and it rapidly spread. Containing and exhausting the flames took all of Maypur's men, and when they returned, they discovered that their children had been stolen. Molaran's men would return a few days later and told them that all of Maypur's problems would go away if only they would turn to Kali. Mahan personally sent these men to meet the goddess in hell, after they issued a veiled threat about what would happen to the children if Maypur didn't comply. Once again, Mahan asked the villagers to persevere and let them know of a vision he had been granted in a dream of a man who falls from the sky and would recover their sacred stone along with their children. Cut to the actual time of the story.
We're here!
So let's go to 1935. And as Junior's father doesn't get mentioned again, I'm just going to refer to him as Jones or Henry Jones or Dr. Henry Jones. And at this point, he has traveled the world 10 times over. He's found countless artifacts. And, he's just... I think at this point, he's just a little bit worn out and cynical of his profession. And before we go forward, I think it's important to point out that this dude was a tad athletic. He was a tad charismatic, but he was no The Rock.
Who is?
And it also seems to be a period where he wasn't in close contact with any of his good friends. You know, Marcus is just doing his own thing. And this is seen by the fact he took a paid job for Shanghai's most notorious crime lord.
Jeez. That sounds like a death wish kind of thing, to be honest.
He's kind of like on the wrong side of his
What's the
profession.
complete opposite of what I've been doing for a while? Oh, I know. Gangsters.
Yeah. Lao Chang built his empire on opium and white slavery.
Okay.
So this all kicks off when the Manchurian government officially hires Lao Chang to secure the ashes of Nurhaci, who was the first emperor of the Manchu dynasty. The ashes themselves were stolen in 1903. Lao was known to have a large collection of rare and royal ashes because he used the ashes of dead family members as collateral when he gave out loans.
Nice guy.
In turn, Lao commissioned Jones to recover the remains. And you know what? This makes perfect sense. Because they fucking hate each other. So let's go back to Shanghai in 1933, where Jones is on his way to Mongolia, and he befriends a young man called Wu Han, who was in a bit of a predicament. His parents and his sister had just died of an influenza outbreak. Lao promised to give his family a proper funeral in return for his labor, and Lao was like, you know, how about I'll just take your family ashes and I won't, and you work for me as long as you want your family back. And and essentially forced him into servitude. You know what? Jones wasn't having any of that shit.
Not down with that.
He stole the remains under Lo's nose, therefore giving Wu Han his freedom.
Oh.
And when Lo Che was aware, Jones was on his way to Mongolia. So, why did he agree to work with somebody who wants to kill him? It's because in return for these ashes, he would get a diamond known as the Eye of the Peacock. Now, what's the Eye of the Peacock? I don't hear you asking me.
Leslie, what's the Eye of the Peacock? I'm not asking.
It's an artifact that Jones has been chasing the majority of his life.
You did not mention that in the first part of this.
It's a 500 millimeter by 25 millimeter diamond owned by Alexander the Great. It originally was the second eye of a large, solid gold peacock statue. The statue was destroyed following Alexander's death, with one diamond being sold to an Indian emperor, which saw it cut apart, and the other diamond was stolen and believed to be lost to history before it was rediscovered as clues were left to its whereabouts, which I'll get into. Initially, it was believed to be discovered, stolen, by a British colonel in an ancient temple in India. Isn't it so weird how British people tend to find stuff?
We find this stuff all the time. If other cultures wouldn't leave them lying around, we wouldn't pick them up again. That's just the way it is.
They found this country completely empty.
We found America? What are you talking about? It's all good. Oh, correction. Columbus found America. Yeah, we don't have any part in that one.
He was captured by the temple monks who... They weren't impressed. He was able to send a map to his son, which about a century later fell into the hands of a British Indian Army Corporal, Deidre Singh. Ooh, that's fucking even bad for me. I'm going to refer to him as Singh. Singh was in possession of it during the closing moments of World War I and agreed to give the map to a German soldier called Zeig, though Zeig shot Singh during their exchange in no man's land. But he lost the map to two French intelligence soldiers, one being called Lieutenant Remy Bigon and Captain Henry Jones. They were under orders to arrest Singh for passing the information on to the enemy. Following the end of the war, and just after Miss Seymour's death, Jones and Remy went in search for the diamond, but Jones soon decided that this quest was a wild goose chase.
Or wild peacock chase.
And returned home to attend the University of Chicago. However, Remy decided to continue his quest for the diamond, so the friends parted ways. So, Jones retrieves the ashes, but the night before the exchange, Lau sends his son, Cato Can, to steal them. But Jones catches him and wounds his hand in the process. Now, the drop-off is the next night in Lau's nightclub, which is I'm just so bad at pronouncing. Is it Club Ubi-Wan?
Sure.
Yeah.
As good as any pronunciation.
Obey-Wan?
Show me. Obi. No, you've lost me.
Obiwan.
No.
Yeah, I've no idea. And let me tell you, John, things get out of control fast.
Woo!
And set in an unforeseen chain of events.
Love those unforeseen chains of events.
Okay, so you know what double crossing is?
I'm aware of a double cross.
There's not just a lot of double crossing. There's a lot of super duper double crossing.
Yeah.
So you really need to pay attention.
Okay.
So Jones meets with Lau and his two sons, Cato Ken and Chen.
Right.
Both serve as chief lieutenants in his criminal empire. Mm-hmm. Fun fact, Cato Kane is his favorite son, while Chan gets ignored a lot of the times.
That is a fun fact.
That is fun. Yeah. So, so you know when you have something really important and you've got a meeting, do you know what you need to bring to the table?
A gun.
No. This is more powerful than a gun, John.
Okay. Sword?
This is more powerful than a sword.
2 swords and a gun.
I feel like you're not taking this seriously.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying.
Think
the power to negotiate. Negotiation.
Okay. Close your eyes, John. Can you look through your third eye?
Wait, what?
What? Just look through your third eye.
Third eye.
What are you seeing?
I've got my eyes closed. I can't see anything.
Okay, John.
Leslie,
breathe in. We're going to do a slight meditation here. Breathe out. Now, could you picture a dick?
Yes.
Okay, and it's not sexual. It's just a penis.
It's just a penis, guys. Everyone just relax.
Okay.
Calm down.
So, breathe in. Now, picture the penis, and it's growing. And it's growing. And it's engorged, and it's getting big. And now, it's so big, it's right in front of your face.
I don't open my eyes.
And do you know what you're feeling, John?
No.
The energy coming off the dick. It's not the dick itself. It's the big dick energy.
It's the big dick energy.
Now, can you see the energy surrounding this big dick?
Yes, I can.
Is it
quite golden glow?
Imagine it as a white ball coming down through the top of your head and feeling your body, John. Are you doing this? Are you filled with this big dick energy? John.
Yes.
Okay. Big dick energy, it's a very still energy. It's a very confident energy. It's just saying, and I have to make super clear. Women can have big dick energy. Non-binary people can have big dick energy. It's just a force of energy in the universe, and we have to name it, and it doesn't particularly relate to one gender.
It's an energy that happens to be a big dick.
Yeah, that's the best we can articulate it in this universe.
Okay.
And it's just the confidence of having a big dick.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to flap that dick around in anyone's face. You're just a strong, silent penis. And Henry Jones needed this big dick energy. And he goes into this meeting and he big dicks it up. He starts by talking in Mandarin.
Boom!
All over the table. Big dick energy.
Step into the club. Boom!
He goes in hard. And then they're like, holy shit. And then they recap the events for the night before when he stabbed his son. And then they're interrupted by Willie Scott. And you'll find out that getting in her way and being useless is what she's best at.
Yay!
So, who is Willie Scott? She's every bit the cliche that you might expect. Wilma Scott was raised on a farm in Missouri, but from a young age, her ambitions laid firmly in Hollywood, despite the fact that her parents were poultry farmers and one of her grandfathers was a stage magician. Having won a beauty contest, she tries to make a career as a singer, dancer, and actress, but was unable to break into the American film industry during the Great Depression and struck out in Chicago and New York. So she escaped to the Far East, where she landed roles in several Shanghai productions. Her efforts earned her the attention of local crime lord, oh yeah, you've got it, Lao Cheng.
Like Barbara Windsor. She was ended up married to a gangster after appearing in Carry On movies. That's how it happens.
Where she acted as a trophy girlfriend and was the singer at club Obi-Wan.
I think it's actually known as Ubi-Wuni.
Okay. Where that night she performed a Mandarin version of Cole Porter's Anything Goes. So she interrupts this meeting, and I think partly because she was just excited to see another American. So she sits next to them, and then they continue their meeting in the sense that Kato Kan pulls out a gun and demands the ashes.
Told you, bring a gun, bring a gun.
He got that big dick energy.
That's true.
Jones replies by threatening to impale Willie with a carving fork.
Jesus. Is that big dick energy as well, or is that just somewhat misogynist?
No, John. We'll go into it later, but he's gone from big dick energy into flappy dick energy.
Okay.
He's flapping that dick around.
Okay.
And I'm not going to say that big dick energy is better or worse than flappy dick energy. For fuck's sake, flappy dick energy has done a lot in this world. And granted, not a lot of it has been good, but fucking flappy dick energy gets something done.
The Trump presidency,
Yep.
Brexit, all these things. Flappy
Yep.
dick energy.
And these will actually go into Hindu concepts later on. So you just put a pin in that.
Trying to hammer that pin in with my flappy dick ain't happening.
Willie says in her book, at this stage she was scared and thought he was a maniac, but did like the fact that he made a callback to her song when he told Lau, I suggest you give me what you owe me, or anything goes.
Oh, God. That sounds like one of those horror, interviews. Oh God! Like I bet she slips that into any sort of conversation. And then he said to me, "Anything goes."
Lau places a small sack on a lazy Susan and rotates it to them. Willie opens the sack, and it's gold coins, not the diamonds. They try again, and this time he complies. Jones lets Willie go, and she shuffles away. Wu Han, remember him?
Yes.
He's disguised as a waiter and brings over the ashes in a green jade urn. They do the deal, then Jones glugs down some champagne. Lau gives Jones a generous counteroffer. If he gives back the diamond, he'll give him the antidote for the poison he just drank. Super duper double cross.
Oh, super secret, super double cross.
He gives it back to him and then threatens to kill Willie again. And, you know, when you're in the white slave trade, that's not
another
really...
Willie.
Yeah, he was like, no, I don't give two shits. Do whatever you want. But then Wu Han pulls out a gun because he's hiding one. Mm-hmm. And then Lau's least favorite son, Chen, shoots Wu Han, and fucking all anarchy breaks loose.
Okay.
So the poison's kicking in fast, and Jones just has to do something. And once again, this guy seems 30 seconds away from death of all time. And he's not a dummy, but he's also not a mastermind. So he's just constantly thinking on his feet, and there's no better example of this when he picks up a 1 to 2 foot long meat skewer that had 3 chunks of flaming meat on it and throws it into the stomach of Chan.
So the horror film Happy Birthday to You.
So chaos is broken loose. Willie's trying to find the diamond. Jones is trying to find the antidote. Then in the middle of this, all the dance girls come out for a number. Willie ends up grabbing the antidote, and this happens right before Lau's backup arrives, which is a dude with a Tommy gun.
Yeah. Tommy gun.
I think it's fair to say that Jones is fucked, and his only logical escape is to cut down a hanging gong, which he runs behind. He grabs Willie and jumps out of a window. He hits the street. He's got a getaway car, and the driver is a 50-year-old man who just happens to be in the body of her 11-year-old.
What?
Well, he's got a kid sidekick who has the soul of a 50-year-old man.
Precocious, you might say.
His sidekick is Wan Li, a.k.a. Short Round, a.k.a., in my opinion, the true hero of this story.
I love an underdog tale.
Wen Li was born in February 8th, 1926. He was the oldest child of a steel plant foreman in Shanghai. Li became an orphan when a Japanese bombing raid killed his family in January 1923. He was taken in by Christian missionaries, where he picked up maths and English. But he soon turned to the seedy streets of Shanghai's underbelly, acquiring several skills in order to survive, such as working as a guide, being a pickpocket, and a cut purse. Lai gained much English from watching American films in the Tai Fung Theatre, he worked in shady areas such as opium dens, and he assumed the nickname Short Rounds. In the Gun Ho Bar in 1935, Short Round attempts to pickpocket Dr. Henry Jones Jr.
Oh, you don't want to be doing that.
And Jones, not afraid...
Not afraid to punch a child.
No,
Oh.
he fucking whips him. Gets him with the bullwhip. He's in a dark place, but he's not a bad dude. And, instead of giving him to the authorities, he introduces him to Wu Han, who gives him a place to stay. He has a small house where he allows street urchins to stay. He got this house in the Shanghai International Settlement from money he got from his ventures with Jones. Because Wuhan has a whole side story I won't even go into. But he worked for the Secret Service for a little while. And then Shorty quickly became Jones's main contact in Shanghai. On one occasion, all three traveled together to the Himalayas, where they were assaulted by nomadic thieves during a yak ride.
Of course.
I can't confirm if it was a personal or business yak ride.
Oh.
During this time, Jones introduced Shorty to American baseball and just taught him additional skills like how to drive. And they also like to play poker in their downtime. So, they're in the back of the car.
It's nice. I like that. That's nice. It's cute.
Yeah, they're all in the back of the car. Jones takes the antidote. While being pursued by several cars and under fire, they reach Nangtao Airport. So, Short Round, being Henry's business manager, approaches Art Weber, who is working in the British airport office. He was reluctant to serve a child, but he ended up accepting his payment because Short Round insisted that he was the assistant to the famous Professor Henry Jones, who was on a very important government case. But I think it more so had to do with the fact that he saw that Short Round was carrying a dagger and that Short Round also gave him a bribe.
A small child comes up to you with a knife and a bribe. You do what that small child wants. That, my friend, is big dick energy right there.
Yeah. Oh, you don't even know half of it yet, John. On short notice, he gets them 3 seats on a flight out of China, but it was a livestock plane. They were carrying poultry and supplies. They get on the plane right as Lau arrives. Henry Jones gives him a big fuck you. And they unwittingly leave the country upon a plane that Lau owns. Lau actually...
Score!
Lau owned a legitimate air freight business. Because, when you're importing dodgy shit in and out of the country...
People.
Yeah. It's kind of handy to have your own airline.
It's like you don't have to fill in the paperwork.
So then Lau contacts the pilots and instructs them to fly the plane off course into the remote mountains on the border of India. They dump the plane's fuel and parachutes out, and, they intend to kill them all in the crash. The pilot accidentally wakes up Willie just before they jump out, and it's okay. How hard could it be to fly a plane with no fuel?
Leslie, I would say very easy.
Now, I kind of find this next part hard to believe, and it's due to the fact that the primary text is Scott's biography, and she doesn't really seem like a reliable narrator.
No.
Apparently, Jones finds an inflatable lifeboat, which they jump out of the plane and inflate in midair. Now, I actually don't disbelieve that this actually happened. I just don't think it happened at the height they were talking about in the book.
Right.
Because if you're hitting soft snow, maybe.
But how is she high?
Oh, yeah, it was pretty high. And
Right.
so they land on the snowy side of a mountain, and they instantly fall off a cliff. Willie describes being at least as large as the Empire State Building, and they end up hitting the Yamuna River, and they end up fighting the rapids for a little bit before it slowed down.
Now, Leslie, I am, as you know, an artist.
Yeah.
Creative, a writer. I'm not into science. But I do feel that 3 human bodies on a raft such as that one, falling off the Empire State Building, kasplat.
But what if it's the will of Shiva? Checkmate.
Sure, I give you science, you go religion. Take that, atheists. I'm just picking upon what she wrote, not what I'm...
Oh, I agree, John. I agree.
saying.
I don't think it's probably as high. Like, I don't doubt that it happened. I just think she's...
We fell heights of 2 and 3 feet.
Yeah. So they hit the river, and then the boat peacefully stops in front of Mayan, the shaman of the Mayapur village. And also, in Willie's defense, there is a massive cliff face on the Yamaha River near the village that fits her description perfectly. Mahan points them to their disheveled village. They get to the village, and the entire town comes out, and they both say, Jones and Scott, that they're almost worshipped. Jones would just talk about just how fucking just the area was just dirt and poor, and you go into this village and you could feel people's misery. Like, it was just radiating off them. From there, he goes, meets the chieftain and Mahan, and they give them food. And at this point, Jones reprimands Willie because she doesn't want to eat it. And he was like, for fuck's sake. Don't be, like, they're giving you food. Don't be so fucking disrespectful.
It sounds like they're pretty poor, and if they're offering you food, like, you just, jeez.
And also being loyal Hindus, I'm guessing, like, it would have been vegetarian food. It's nothing that you can't prepare incorrectly.
Exactly.
Jones asks for help to get into Delhi, and they asked them to go to Peacock Palace, which is nowhere near Delhi. And he actually thought Peacock Palace had been abandoned, which it was up until recently. And then they explained what's been happening to their village, and that's why Shiva brought them to him. And Jones is like he definitely feels for these people. He just doesn't exactly believe. Like, he believes that they believe it. He's a bit...
Yeah, good for you guys, you know. Good on you.
Later that night, he finds a weakened child named Rajin who escaped Peacock Palace. He gives Jones a piece of cloth. On the cloth shows Sankara being gifted the stones from Shiva. This is where his motives get a bit conflicted, because he definitely knew about these stones. And if you have the stones, the promise of fortune and glory, which he could use for his fortune and glory.
Yes.
Not the villagers. But you know what? He could go to Peacock Palace. Like, he believes that there are actually kids captured there.
Yeah,
so he could go to the palace, he could free the kids, or he could tell the authorities about the kids, or he could help this village in some way that an American archaeologist, people will listen to him.
Yeah.
He can get attention on this. And if he finds the stones, they get the kids back, he gets the stones.
Super secret double cross. No.
Yeah, like, what's the harm? So he agrees to do it, but I think more importantly that this marks the first and only time in the history of the world in which a man wearing a fedora has been respectful to somebody else's religion. Okay, before I go on, I want to unpack a few things. The primary religion we're dealing with is Hinduism, and Hinduism has no single founder, no single scripture, and not even a commonly agreed set of teachings, and it comprises of a lot of different gods, Shiva being one of the main ones, and without question, the coolest one. Like, he's not just the coolest Hindu god, he's the coolest god across the board.
Ooh, Leslie's hot for the gods.
And once again, you may not recognize the name, but you've definitely seen a statue of him. He's got 4 arms and a snake around his neck. And as I mentioned before, he's a part of like a little trilogy with Brahma and Vishnu. Brahma is the creator, Vishnu is the protector, and Shiva is, and don't fucking get this wrong, the destroyer and the transformer. Destroyer in the sense that the destruction is not negative. It's a positive, nourishing, and constructive destruction which builds and transforms life and energy for the welfare of the world and the beings it inhabits. It's like, sometimes you get fired for a job that can be considered distraction. Maybe you'll get a better job.
Okay,
You know,
that makes sense. Cause and effect almost. So.
Yeah, like a relationship ends and you realize that maybe that relationship wasn't as good in retrospect. It's a discretion, but it's not in itself negative. It's not without consequences, and it's just not destruction for the sake of it. He destroys in order to renew and generate life forms and facilitate the transformation and evolution of modifications of nature. The destruction is the destruction of an artist, a surgeon, or a cook. Although destruction he facilitates also smoothly translates into things and events from one stage or another. He destroys our imperfections to ensure our personal growth, John. He destroys our illusion and desires and ignorance. He destroys our evil and negative nature. He destroys our old memories so we can move on with the movement of time. John, are you listening to me? He destroys our relationships, our attachments, our impurities, physical and mental wrongdoings, the effects of bad karma, our passions and emotions, and things that stand between us and God, the impediments to our progress of inner transformation. And in the end, we have made significant progress when we are ready and prepared, and when we are willing to become transformed into the light and wisdom without any inner conflict. He destroys death itself. Since he is so vital to life and existence, Shiva is synonymous with his wife. Oh, wait a minute. That comes later. He's depicted as being strong and muscular, so it could be The Rock. I'm just, maybe The Rock. Like, his height is around 7 feet, and he wears minimal clothing from the skins of dead animals. And I have to point out, he doesn't kill animals. It's animals that have passed away. Okay. Because he's a massive fucking animal lover.
Like the people that hate the animal fur trade, but will buy a fur coat or a leather coat from a second-hand shop because,
Yeah, not Shiva.
No, not Shiva, though.
Shiva, how can I say this? He is utterly powerful. And so he knew that no woman could handle his fierceness when it comes to sex. But his wife, goddess Parve, it's complicated, I'll explain her later, was reluctant to feel like an actual wife. And for obvious reasons, she wanted intimacy with her husband. But even after his repeated denials, his wife convinced him. And they fucked. Wow. And they both vanished from time itself. Their sexual actions lasted for months and months, and no one knew where the two exactly are. After the earth started shaking and the hills started slipping, other gods prayed for them to come back. And when they did, Lord Shiva bowed down to his wife for being powerful enough to handle him. Ooh. That is fucking big dick energy. That is it at its core. And I'm being quite serious. Like, while I think Hindus have more important things, like they're probably thinking about more important aspects of the human experience than big dick energy. But, and like, obviously I'm being a bit silly, but being a bit serious at the same time, I really do think it's a Hindu concept. And I really do think it's connected with Shiva. And in terms of who people could worship, he was pretty chilled. Yeah. He'd put no restrictions on who could worship him. Like, didn't have to be a Hindu. Could be a Jehovah's Witness. Could be a demon, which kind of upset a few gods. Because
I can imagine.
He never discriminated between positive and negative or good or bad. So god or demon and so on. Like, if you come to him and you're honest, he'll be honest back to you.
What nowadays we would call a social justice warrior.
And he was never biased, and he never will be, because he also believes in karma.
You gotta believe in karma.
He also liked a joint.
See, now I'm just picturing some bearded kid in a bedroom with some black light posters, just like, yeah, man, yeah. It doesn't matter what you do, it's all the same.
Yeah. Doesn't have an issue if you like one as well. And he was known to smoke everything from weed to dead bodies. Whatever's going around.
Okay, you lost me there. I was with you around until that last bit.
And this one, I read somewhere, and I didn't double check, but he's also like, if you just want to worship his wife, cool. He's not one of those needy gods that's like, worship me, worship me, worship me. It's like, yeah, my wife's pretty cool.
Equally, though, he's not going to turn it around and go, Why don't you want to worship my wife? Why don't you want to worship... Like that horrible scene in Suicide Squad when the Joker's like, why don't you like Harley Quinn? That's a terrible scene.
Yeah.
That's cool, though. I like this.
That I didn't double check. I think I read that somewhere, so that one's a bit... So anyway, Shivaism is one of the 4 major sects of Hinduism. Also, that explains why this village has so many fucking kids. They leave the next day via elephant and are guided by Sinju, who's Maha's son. They travel for almost 2 days. Then Sinju leaves them out of fear and takes the elephants when they find a foreboding statue of Kalamar at the base of Pankot Palace. I'll explain who Kalamar is a bit later, because there's so much fucking backstory in this one. So at the palace, they get greeted by Prime Minister Chatalaya. So let's quickly talk about this region, Pankot Province. Surrounded by mountains, the central northern Indian region of Pankot has existed as early as 1500, while being with the beginning and the successor of the Marathas that have ruled out of Pankot Palace. It's also the capital building of the province. It's a bit weird because, in the UK, the Queen or the Prime Minister, they live in like 10 Downing Street or Buckingham Palace. They don't live in the Houses of Parliament. They usually tend to be 2 different.
Yeah, we have the House of Commons and the House of Lords.
But here it's the same thing. The palace was built on top of a mountain known as Wounded or Bleeding Mountain, named after the various subterranean volcanic activities that take place underneath.
Exactly like the British Parliament.
Well, they probably have various caves to get in and out.
Oh, yeah, that's a news story in itself.
The mountain was located in a tropical valley, but not far from a murky, crocodile-infested tributary of the Ganges River.
Are you sure you're not on the House of Commons Wikipedia page right now? Because seriously, this is sounding very similar.
Rumors began to circulate in the area that it used to be the center of the Thuggy cult, who were dedicated to the goddess Kali after their first arrival in the British in the 18th century. Pankot eradicated all their thuggies around 1837, and they had a temple of Kali that was destroyed. In 1985, the Principality of Pankot ceased to exist as a political entity and eventually became a princely state of Pankot Province, while the decade saw the foundation of a small village called Mayapur, which was said to be created for the express purpose to watch out for signs of the resurgence of the cult. So after that, basically, they kind of sided with the English for everything. It just kind of was like, whatever you think. Around this time, the Maharaja was a young child called Zalim Singh, who he took over from his father, Premjit Singh, who died in the spring of 1930, which we know now he basically discovered a Thuggy cult and he was going to expose them to the British, but he was poisoned by the hands of Mola Ram. As he was a minor, he didn't really have any power, and the Prime Minister Chatalaya took care of most of the day-to-day activities in the region. So they got to the palace just in time for a dinner that has the catchy name, and it sounds like I'm not saying it correctly, but I am.
As in there, you mean Dr. Jones
Willie,
and Willie?
Willie, yeah. So they get to the palace just in time for the Guardian of Traditional Dinner.
Okay.
That's the name. Which was a big...
It's a franchise.
So it was a big banquet in aid of promoting Pankot's status in the region. And they invited dignitaries and merchants and, there's a lot of hobnobbing. Jones wasn't the only unexpected guest, so was Captain Philip James Bunbert, who was an officer in the 11 Platoon Rifles that heard about the Thuggy revival and brought his unit to the region. And he came to Pankot Palace for an inspection. So at this dinner, Jones was he was sussing stuff out, but, he kind of didn't want to offend anyone, so he just he hinted at it, but he didn't go too far talking about the kids and the stone, just because, you have to play it cool.
Playing it cool, Daddy-o.
But he was tipped off that maybe things weren't what they seemed, and he was tipped off by a really subtle thing, the menu.
Take me through the menu, Leslie.
The first course was gently roasted venaha, which was wild roasted boar presented with its roasted suckling offspring, called ringlets, aka snake surprise, which was live baby eels stuffed inside a moist boa constrictor.
That is quite a surprise.
Crispy coleoptera, which was in the menu described as French beetles still in shell, bursting with melting delectable innards.
Innards.
Soup of the head, aka eyeball soup, which contained various parts of the heads of sheep in a broth. Primate parfait. soft, chilled monkey brain served within its open head of the primate. So, what's the tip off here, John? What's up with this menu?
It's quite meaty menu.
Yeah, it's not a strict thing that Hindus should be vegetarian.
No, but it seems quite extravagant.
Well, there's a difference between, say, you're out and you have to kill an animal to survive, and serving the fucking head of the animal in which you eat out of.
Mate, I've eaten a chicken nugget, all right? I did not see any problem with this. But I was going to question it because is this and this was the official, this wasn't something Willie made up, because Willie strikes as the kind of person who's a bit like,
and he took a menu.
Yeah, so, this is, wow, jeez. Okay, fair enough then.
So it's like, no Hindu is going to serve meat out of fucking, they've got more respect.
Yeah,
than
fair
that.
enough. I didn't realize that. I did not realize that was a thing of Hinduism. So,
well, this is the podcast. This is what we learn.
That's what I'm saying. You're teaching me.
Jones picked up to this, but it wasn't enough to really. What do you got to do? He was just on guard. Later that night, he's attacked by a thuggy in his quarters. So, finally, let's talk about the fucking thuggy. Thugs travelled in groups across the subcontinent of India for 600 fucking years.
Wow, they should just take on a train. They
They have various origin stories, but they're all kind of the same story. They all revolve around a Muslim tribe or family fleeing after murdering somebody they shouldn't. And their first actual mention in literature was in 1345. And they're very different from a gang for two major reasons. They were mentioned as a band or a fraternity and just not ordinary thieves. This is because thuggy membership was something that was passed from father to son. You have three sons. They're three thuggies. You teach them to be thuggies.
Oh, okay.
So that's how they lasted for 600 years.
Yeah, of course.
And then, you teach them as a child. It's as much as a religion as anything else.
Yeah. You're an accountant. You expect your children to become accountants. You expect their children to become accountants and so on.
Their main MO was robbery, which, as they went on, became less of a question about solving problems associated with poverty and more of a fashion.
Hey.
Yeah. And, they had rules, because it's great when people who are completely amoral pretend they have rules, because it makes them feel better.
How's how I get by in life?
They would have rules about who they rob, but it would vary. The list of people they wouldn't rob include women, those affected with leprosy or other physical ailments or disabilities.
Leprosy.
Fakers, which is a part of the Islamic faith. They were people that essentially took a vow of poverty and any Sikhs, we still have Sikhs, and certain professions were prohibited, such as elephant drivers, sellers or carriers of oil, or anyone who basically had a sacred animal. Now, John.
Leslie.
I don't want to be cynical, but I think this has less to do with the exploitation of the weak and more to do with they didn't have any fucking money. Because... you think, because they really like to rob from wealthy pilgrims, merchants, wedding parties, bankers, agents, people with money. Isn't that weird, John?
So weird, though.
Secondary, it was a cult, but it was a super odd cult because it cut through caste, which was obviously a big thing in India.
Yeah.
It cut through religion. It was comprised of Hindus and Muslims who worship the goddess Kali. Now, the Thuggi thinks that their spiritual origin is in Kali herself. According to a legend, Kali was fighting Rakta Bija. The problem with Rakta Bija was he wasn't even in his final form, John.
Oh, my God.
So they fight, and for every drop of blood shed, a new demon formed. And Kali couldn't keep up. So she created two men and gave them a strip from her skirt, which they used to choke the demons to ensure no blood was spilt. So that's why they would choke all of their victims, which I'll get to in a moment.
Yeah.
Now, are you ready for some mental gymnastics, John?
Lay it on me, baby.
Okay. So, according to some colonial sources, thugs believed that they weren't the bad guys. They had a positive role in saving human lives. Isn't that weird? That without the thug's service, Kali might destroy mankind. They're the good guys, John.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not judging.
Well, you should be, because it's a fucking load of shit. This kind of makes sense when you hear the more widely accepted version of the story I told before.
Okay.
And also, this story is everything. Like, everything about this podcast comes together with this one.
Right now.
Okay, so according to the Hindu myth, Kali was fighting Raktabija with 2 other gods. She joined right at the end, and she stretched her tongue over the earth and licked up each drop of blood.
Big tongue energy.
But ultimately, she killed him, but she kind of just went a little bit nuts.
Oh.
She got a little bit bloodlusty.
Yeah.
Aktabija also had like an army of demons that she destroyed. And basically, she just went mad and started dancing the dance of destruction. She started killing innocent people. And after seeing this, the gods were extremely worried. She's gone rogue. And so they approached Lord Shiva for help, because only Shiva had the power to stop Kali at this stage. So Lord Shiva went and laid down among the corpses where the goddess was dancing. Kali accidentally stepped on Shiva, and she looked down and saw him there, and I guess maybe for a moment thought that she had killed him by accident. And basically she snapped out of it, and she calmed down and was deeply ashamed that she let into her worst aspects.
Yeah. We've
She
all
was-
done that.
Yeah, but that's not the full story. We'll get back to that in a second. But you can see how the original Thuggee mashed these ideas together. In their version, they killed the demons. In the more accepted version, she went bloodlusty. So if they don't kill these people,
Yeah.
she will.
Okay.
So they're mashing these 2 stories together somehow with mental gymnastics.
Which very rarely happens in religion.
But, you know, obviously this was just an excuse to kill and rob people.
Yeah, totally.
And this part I haven't got, this parts of Hinduism just got me a little bit confused. So I'm not 100% on this next part. You might be wondering, how do Muslims worship Kali?
Leslie, how do Muslims worship Kali?
Well, that's interesting, John, because they worship Kali while still claiming to be a part of a monotheistic faith. And I think this has to do with 2 different things. I think it's because the Hindu expression of worship isn't exactly what we think it is in the West.
Right.
It has different layers to
Yeah.
it. But I stress it could be wrong. I also think they saw Kali as an avatar to Allah. So they were worshipping Allah through Kali, much like, and this isn't 100% accurate, but for the West, the best way we can explain this is it's like sometimes Catholics worship saints.
Okay, yes.
That's not perfect, but it makes a bridge
Yes.
so you get it. But once again, just excuse to rich people.
Like
so let's
Catholicism. Don't say.
So let's talk about the thuggies' techniques. To take advantage of their victims, the thugs would join travelers and gain their confidence. This would allow them to surprise and strangle these strangers with a handkerchief or a noose, and sometimes catguts. While tracking a large group, a thuggy band might disperse along the route and joins it in little stages. They would conceal their relationships and eventually outnumber their victims. They just join in small, non-threatening increments. Okay, so, and this works at an advantage, is if the travelers have any doubts about somebody in the party, they can talk to each other because they don't know. Of course. So, like, they're onto you. How about you kind of go, or blah, 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 blah. And that did a lot to avoid suspicion. They like to kill people in remote locations that have no escape, like riverbeds, and typically they were better at geography than their victims. They were careful to kill people who are far away from home, and that's likely wouldn't be missed for a couple of weeks or months. Attacks were conducted at night or during a rest break, or, you know, just in a busy time where people were doing chores and there was background noise, so people wouldn't be alarmed. It was a quick, quiet method, leaving no stains and requiring no special weapons, because they primarily would have like a yellow handkerchief.
Right.
That's not a knife.
That's not a knife.
You see that? That's not a threat.
That's not a knife. This is a knife.
Yeah. Usually it would take 1 or 2 thuggies to kill a traveller. One would strangle and one would hold down their limbs so they couldn't fight back. They would either bury the bodies or throw them in the well, and they were very good at hiding bodies. And at one point, there were mass graves of hundreds of people found.
Wow.
And for the fact that the thuggies preferred strangulation might have had to do with a quirk of the law.
Right.
Because, of course,
Loopholes. Boom.
in the Mughal Empire, which ruled India from the 1500s, for a murderer to be sentenced to death, he or she must have shed blood of the victim. Those whose murderers did not shed blood might not face imprisonment, just maybe hard labor or penalty, but they wouldn't be executed. Shit's about to get real, John. Estimates of the total number of victims widely vary because there's no reliable source, because no one was really fucking taking this serious or really thinking of a threat, because it was just Indians killing Indians. So, according to the Guinness Book of World Records, the Thuggee cults were responsible for approximately 2 million deaths.
Wow.
There's also some estimates to say it's as low as 50,000 over 150 years. So they haven't even got started. They stepped it up a notch in the late 1700s and the early 1800s due to multiple factors. Between the breakdown of the Mughal Empire in the early 1700s and the subsequent expansion of the British forces inland from the coastal ports. This basically created this weird vacuum of power, which allowed the Thuggees to be more aggressive. Because, spoiler, the English did not give a fuck to start off with.
Yeah.
Because they didn't attack them.
Yeah.
Or if they did, they were smart enough to hide it.
Yeah, that sounds like my home country.
And this was also due to the introduction of this highly profitable industry called opium. So there's greater wealth, more targets. And also, the younger thugs were like, fuck you, Dad. I'm not keeping your rules.
I'm going to expand.
I'm going to kill a woman if I want to. So,
like youth of today.
Yeah, that tradition for the first time was breaking apart. And at this point, Britain was only in a small piece of India, and many British officers saw India like how we see the American Old West. It was a place to go to make your name before going back.
Yeah.
So legends about you will...
Echo in eternity.
Yeah. Except the hero of this fucking part of the story. And I like this story a lot. We're talking about a British Bengali army officer called Henry William Sleeman. He came to India and genuinely had an affection for the people and the culture. He arrived in 1809 at the age of 22, and unlike most soldiers, he wasn't into drinking or escorts, and he spent a lot of his time studying about the region and different religions and different languages. And you probably can see where this is going. He was shocked when he learned about this 600-year-old gang. So he brought this to the attention of his superior officers, who just kind of replied, "Oh, yeah?
Huh?
Yeah.
No, what do you want from us?
Yeah.
What?
So he did not want to let this go. He transferred to the civil service and became a magistrate in 1822. And with a little bit of power under his belt and a standing within the community, he dedicated the next 18 years of his life to eradicating the thugs. And he would often travel into India and getting information from villages. And you have to think about this. This has been a threat all of your life, all of your parents' life, and no one has ever stood up against them. And this English guy, who somehow fucking knows your language, is asking you about it. Like, that just must have been unbelievable.
Well, it's like nowadays, if you go to any foreign country, the English people will always learn the language of any country they're in nowadays.
Yeah. And piece by piece, he started building a profile of this ancient and sophisticated culture. And quite literally, everything I mentioned, we know because of him.
Jeez.
Whatever picture you have of these thugs, I'm going to shatter it, because most of these guys, they led double lives.
Yeah?
They lived in suburbia.
Oh, what?
And they traveled a lot for work.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So a lot of their families...
Putting the wedding ring in the pocket, that kind of thing. I see.
Yeah. A lot of the families had no idea what they did. It was a sophisticated operation to the point that they had their own slang called Ramusina, which obviously allowed them to talk anywhere in private. Except Sleeman worked out the language. He ended up using that against them. And basically, India was becoming more and more valuable for the British, so they had to act on the threat. So in 1835, the government of India established the Thuggee and Decoy Department with Sleeman as the first superintendent. At this point, Sleeman was given a lot of power. He rounded up a bunch of thugs and found out the ones that were willing to snitch. And his first major breakthrough came with the capture of a thug called Freeringa, who brought Sleeman to a mass grave of several hundred bodies.
Wow.
And then he kind of got a lot of snitches because of a weird Hindu thing. Because clearly the gods have turned their backs on them. It's a fate of the gods that this should happen, so why shouldn't I talk? So from here, it was game over. Sleeman developed elaborate intelligent techniques that predated similar methods in Europe and the US by decades. He maintained vast cross-reference files on thugs, including their alias, hometowns, associations, travel routes, methods, locations of concealing bodies, and other important information. And you know what? British India was like, can we use that? And this resulted in thousands of men being imprisoned, executed, or expelled. So then, Sleeman got even more power. At this point, he was allowed to lock up and execute anyone he liked. Sleeman got a bit nasty towards the end, and unfortunately...
Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Like, I can understand why he did this, because the threat was so big, so you have to go to drastic actions to get rid of it.
Right, okay.
So towards the end, he locked up mass families. So the teachings of the thuggies could not escape these prisons. He separated the men from women, and in his defense, he gave people skills.
Yeah.
They could just never leave. But also, I think a lot of the women would be like, you know, it's not like... I have no interest in my son being a thuggy.
That is kind of morally grey, that bit.
But also, I can see how...
I can see the pathologic, but
yeah,
I don't think I necessarily agree with it.
And possibly it was justified. Possibly this was the only way to stop it. And being like, what was the other? He could have killed him.
Yeah, true.
So after 4 decades in India, Sleeman goes back to England. And after 9 days at sea, he dies of heart failure at the age of 65. And this is a little fun fact. The Crown gave Sleeman 83 acres of land. You know what he did to it?
Burnt it to the ground.
Gifted it to dirt poor peasants.
I was close.
The town still exists, and it's called Sleemanabad.
Oh.
And the police station is where he convicted a lot of thuggies. And I've seen pictures of it, and like, it's not nice. Like, Sleeman, he did this virtual no comfort. Like, he wasn't. Okay, so get ready to be shocked, John.
I'm gonna be shocked.
Some scholars claim that the thuggies were just an invention of the British administration.
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of evidence of human sacrifice or Kali worship.
Yeah.
Like, the only temples, and read between the lines when I say this, the only temples in the world associated with Thuggee and Kali have been found by Dr. Henry Jones.
Okay.
But saying that, it was generational threat.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you wipe out every Kali temple? Why wouldn't townspeople wipe out any trace of the Thuggee?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you, in retaliation for what they did,
Yeah, of course.
obliterate any trace of them in the earth?
Yeah.
But you can see, and I find it hard to believe, at some point the British didn't abuse this power. Because, how could it ever be abused, John?
How?
Hello, wealthy landowner. I think you could be a Thuggee that's worshipping Kali.
Better take the land off you. Don't want you to be growing your Thuggee crops and your Thuggee house and your Thuggee children.
Hello, Prince of this province who isn't too keen about England being here.
I better take that Thuggee palace from you, sir. Are you trying to suggest that the English did bad things, Leslie? To my face,
I have absolutely no doubt that it was abused in some way, because it would have had to be.
You'd be a fool and a communist otherwise to think so.
So back to Jones's rooms, he's attacked by a thuggy who has...
Henry Jones. I completely forgot about him. Great. Thanks, Leslie.
He's attacked from behind with a grunt. Jones attempts to overpower him, but comes up a little short.
No.
That's when the true hero of the story...
It's your cue, John.
Who's the true hero of the story?
True hero of the story is Short Round.
Wakes up and throws Jones his whip. He whips the thuggy around the neck.
Oh.
But the thuggy manages to rip the whip out of Jones's hand. It flings up and gets caught in a ceiling fan for when he accidentally hangs himself. Jones goes to check on Willie, and he notices a slight breeze, and he eventually finds a secret passageway. There was an inscription that matches the cloth he got from the kid from the village. Together they read, "Follow in the footsteps of Shiva, do not betray his truths." Shorty and Jones get their stuff and go down the passageway, leaving Willie behind. The first thing they do is they walk into a trap that was set up to kill them and keep them out of the temple.
Go team!
So they're locked in this chamber, and they instantly activate a secondary trap in which spikes come out of the floor and roof, and the roof slowly collapses. Now, Willie...
I'm just disappointed more than anything.
Willie hears the cries, and according to her biography, she's incredibly brave, and by herself she finds a release lever. She enters the chamber and accidentally activates the trap again, and they get the fuck out of there, but now they're trapped in this underground hellhole.
This would make a fantastic, reminds me of the 1940s serials. I love it. Keep going.
Yeah, it should be.
Each episode. What's going to happen now?
So then they happened upon a temple for Kali, and they witnessed an ancient thuggy ceremony. Okay, so let's talk about Kali, and I promise you this is the last big spiel.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to this because all I know about Kali, since you keep mentioning it, is Big Dumb Face, the popular side project by Wes Borland. You might know Wes Borland from Limp Bizkit. And he did a song called Kali's The Sweet Hog, which I think possibly now in hindsight, it was the 90s, possibly a little bit culturally insensitive.
Ouch. So, Kali, otherwise known as Kalama, or Goddess Kali.
Ooh.
Are you ready for this bombshell, John Christopher Noonan?
Always ready, mate.
Kali is Shiva's wife. Kind of. It's complicated. She's his wife in a different form. Because
okay.
Shiva, how can I say this? Shiva, just like Jones, he got that big dick energy.
The big dick energy again.
It has two wives. And okay, so Shiva's very easy to explain, but Kali is far more complex in terms of her description and her purpose within the religion. And granted, my understanding of Hinduism, it just is what it is. So I'm going to try to not fuck this up, basically. Okay, so there's several traditions of how Kali came into existence. And probably the main version, the version that relates best to the story, was when the warrior Jugan, who had 10 arms carrying a weapon in each one, rode on a lion or a tiger into battle and fought with and I'm not even fucking going to pronounce his name. She fought against a buffalo demon. Jurug becomes so enraged that her anger burst from her forehead in the form of Kali.
Whoa.
And we're going to get to this. Shiva's entrance into the world was quiet and still. Kali's entrance in the world was violent. And like all the different variations of her origins are all about her springing forth and movement and focus and, energy. Once born, the black goddess went wild and ate the demons she came across, stringing their heads on a chain that she wore around her neck. It seemed impossible to calm Kali's blood attack, which now extended to any wrongdoer, and people of God were at loss what to do. She is the goddess of death, John. The goddess of time and of doomsday, and is often associated with sexuality and violence, but is also considered a strong mother figure and symbolic of motherly love. Kali also embodies Shakti, which is feminine energy, creativity, and fertility, and is the incarnation of Parvati, who is Shiva's first god, but she's it in a different form. She's often represented in art as a fearful fighting warrior with a necklace of skulls, skirt of arms, lunging tongues, and brandishing a knife of dripping blood. She is also very dark, either black or dark blue, and has several arms. So, John.
Leslie.
Let's take a moment to talk about Kali and Shiva's relationship with each other. So, let's go back to the original story. Shiva stops Kali's bloodlust. And now that you know that they're husband and wife, that changes that story.
It's a whole different backstory now.
Yeah.
It's like the best Jeremy Kyle episode ever.
Okay, so just go with me here.
I'm going with you.
This representation reveals the significance of two fundamental aspects of reality. On one hand, there's the dynamic, immanent aspect of God, aka Kali's dance. On the other hand, there's a static, transcendent aspect of consciousness, aka Shiva, laying down there, still but powerful. And this might get a bit complex, but at the end, I'll sum all this up. Shiva is white because he signifies the infinite divine light, inherent because of the absence of movement and action reveals the conscious, pure, homogeneous, and compact. But on the other hand, Kali's dance signifies the dynamic and active aspect of the divine, and the dark colors of her skin indicates that the processes of the creation Lord Shiva is the silent aspect of the highest transcendental truth, while Mother Kali is the dynamic aspect of transcendental truth. Truth is complete when it's both dynamic and silence, when the dynamic aspect and silent aspect function together. In a religious text that's too hard to pronounce, it says, that is far, at the same time is near, that moves and that moves not, that is within and that is without. It is moves and it is moves not. When Mother Kali performs her role, reality is moving. When Lord Shiva is performing, reality is silent. When they perform together, it moves and it moves not. Without human consciousness, when we try to see the truth, it is far, very far. But with our divine consciousness, when we try to see the truth, it is all near. It's right in front of our noses. That is within, and that is without. These conflicting terms cease when our inner consciousness is fully awakened. If something is within, that very thing also has to be without. If there's a seed, there will be a tree. And if there's a tree, there will be a seed. If the truth is already there within, then the truth has to be manifested sooner or later outside. Lord Shiva is the silent aspect of the highest transcendental truth. Mother Kali is the dynamic aspect of transcendental truth. So, John, they fulfilled the highest supreme together, like the observe and the reverse of the same coin. Shiva is silent. Mother Kali is active and dynamic. If we see with our ordinary human eyes, then we see that they're separate. But if we see with our inner eye, we see that they're together. Lord Shiva is big dick energy. Mother Kali is flappy dick energy.
It reminds me of that text of Paula Abdul when she said that I take 2 steps forward, I take 2 steps back. We come together because opposites attract, and you know.
Bit more complicated than that, but yes.
Thank you.
The problem, John, is the original thuggies couldn't see. They fucking didn't get this truth. They couldn't see it with their fucking third eye. They couldn't see it and were unwilling to accept this transcendental truth. They could stop Kali's bloodlust by being her bloodlust. But in reality, do you know what these fuckers did?
What?
These fuckers cucked Shiva. But Shiva has that big dick energy.
Boom.
And it's the only thing that could stop her. So they worshipped a perverse version of Kali. And we see this more so with the new thuggies. And as I said before, they happened before this ceremony in a temple created for Kali. The temple was broken up in a few areas, positioned towards the back. Worshippers in the middle was the Maharaja, little fuckhead. And then then there was a large curved opening which led down to a river of lava. And then, this is the wrong word, it's the main presbytery, which is, that's a Christian word.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying. Then there's a large statue of Kali, which has some of the iconography of Kali, such as the skull necklace, but was clearly made in their image and in their purpose, because it doesn't represent any of the traditional representations of it.
Yeah, of course.
There's also an upper area where Jones was at, which seems to have no purpose other than viewing the ceremonies. Then...
Well, you're going to have someone to look down from.
Yeah. Then... Mola Ram walks out. We know he's the son of a thuggy priest who survived the British's attack to eradicate the cult.
So he's going to be pretty pissed.
Oh, yeah.
Angry.
So he emigrated from Bengal to Peacock in search of the Shankar stones. Willie described him as being a large, intimidating man with just something magnetic about him. Mm-hmm. Mola Ram embodies flappy dick energy, John. Once again, neither big dick or flappy dick. They both are. You can use big dick energy in a bad way. I don't know how personally, but you can. So then they perform an ancient ceremony in which Mola Ram rips out his... They have trouble forcing Jones to drink it for obvious reasons. Until it combusts in Mola Ram's hands. This one was a real crowd pleaser.
Sure. You were not kidding when you said that the shit of which you would be speaking of would get serious.
And I think it's a good time to point out, like, I don't want to shit on people who worship Kali. Like, I know a lot of good people who worship Kali, and because you worship Kali doesn't mean you're going to be a part of a thuggy cult.
No. Or rip out hearts.
And if you look in Victoria, the current crime rate of those who worship Kali is 1% of the population.
So there you go.
So what I think they're doing here, instead of defending the world from Kali like the original thuggies, they're trying to incite her bloodlust.
Right, okay.
The thuggy bring out 3 Shankra stones. They join them together and they start to glow because of the diamonds that are inside. They take them to a skull altar and place them in the eye and nose sockets. And then they start to worship Kali. Jones sees this opportunity to be so fucking rich and famous. He heads down to the altar and takes the stones. And on the way back, you know, he hears the screaming of children. And, you know, the actual reason he's there for.
Oh, that's right, the children.
So he goes off to investigate while Willie and Short Round get captured. He finds the main floor where he sees hundreds of children forced into hard labor. And it looks like it's run by the chief guard, which Willie describes as the biggest Indian ever to live. He's the kind of boss that he encourages you to work harder by whipping you.
Well, you know.
Jones witnesses him nearly killing a kid, throws a rocket at him that allows the kid to get away, but he gets instantly captured.
Yay, but also no.
Oh, well, what are you going to do? Watch a kid get killed?
Yeah, true.
Like, there's no good options in that scenario.
No.
Miserable that they pray to Shiva to kill them. They also tell them about the black sheep of Kali Ma, which I'll go into in a moment, and it's not a long spiel, John. From there, Jones and Shorty are taken to Mola Ram. Mola Ram, being a badass, just tells him his plan for world domination.
You always have to tell the bull plan for domination.
He has 3 of the stones, but needs 2 more. He tells them that about a century ago, the British raided the temple and that the kids are digging for the stones. And you know what? Gems as well, that they can sell because these fucking thuggies still love money. Oh, that's funny. It's great that they're paying the kids. Oh, no, they're doing it for free.
No, Leslie, what it is, it's part of a portfolio
Yeah.
And at the end, you can sort of show to other people, to other employees about your digging skills. You see,
interesting.
Yeah. You earn money afterwards.
And they're like, could you dig for me, but for exposure?
Yeah, totally for exposure. It's for exposure all the time.
Mullah Ram knew that Jones could be useful. Okay, so fucking this is a lot of information that's saying nothing. He gets the chalice of Kali, which was a receptacle used by the Thuggee, which held the blood of Kali, which was a concoction made to succumb drinkers to the black sleep of Kale Ma. And I use the word chalice, but don't get confused and think it's a cup. It was described as a rotting head.
Oh.
They have trouble forcing Jones to drink it for obvious reasons.
No ice?
In order to help, the Maharaja gets out a creator of Jones, a creator being essentially a voodoo doll, which he burns, and this shit actually works, but it's not enough pain to get Jones to give up. Did you know who has no time for this shit?
Short round?
Yes, despite being held by a guard,
Go short round!
he manages to sidekick the Maharaja. So this means the guard lets him go because he has to go attend to the Maharaja. And Short Round sees the chief guard and he thinks one thing. I will fucking destroy you. And he attacks the chief guard to no effect. And he's chained back up.
You have to give him an A for effort.
Oh, yeah. So then they're both whipped, Jones by his own whip and Shorty by the Maharaja's child-size whip. They broke him to the point of he'd much rather fucking take the black sleep than see
totally.
Short Round in pain. And then Molaran tells him that when he gets all the 5 stones, all the other gods will fall and the Thuggee will destroy their British persecutors and establish the goddess Kalama reigns on Earth. And like I said before, I think they're worshipping a demon, but also at the same time, if they set all this up, I think the actual Kalima might be like, maybe?
I don't know.
Like, maybe I do want to rule her, but I can't speak for her or her worshippers. So after drinking the blood, the victims put in a room surrounded by candles until the black sleep can take over their mind. It's described as if being in a nightmare and being awake at the same time. And those under the influence obviously are mindless and loyal to Kali and Molaram. Jones falls for the black sleep and goes back to the temple. And he's joined by Prime Minister Chatala, who's a secret Thuggee and an ally of Molaram, which means even if they do escape this temple, they're probably going to get killed or arrested or shot.
Yeah.
It's not good for them. And also, you should point out, the original Thuggee had connections to police and royalty and stuff like that, so that hasn't changed. Jones is forced to sacrifice Willie to Kali in the cage, like I mentioned before. So let's recap. Willie's useless.
Yeah.
Jones is brainwashed.
Yeah.
I wonder who could be...
Is it the true hero of the story, Short Round?
What's he doing? Oh, that's right. He's on the mining room floor and he's just breaking out of his chains because no child prison can hold him.
See me, Ma, on top of the world.
To get to the temple, he has to climb up this huge ladder, then push off the ladder off the ledge it's sitting on, then jump on a rope that he climbs up to go through a hole in the ceiling to get to the temple.
That's no thing. That's no thing for Short Round.
Meanwhile, Willie is being slowly lowered down to the lava, and I'm not sure why they didn't rip her heart out, but whatever.
What are you, the head of a cult now? Huh? Oh, look at me, I'm Leslie Jones, I know things.
We got more important things to talk about. So Shorty makes it to the presbytery and tries to wake up Jones. Jones hits him to the ground. Balaram sees him and sets his guard on him. Now, John.
Leslie.
Let me tell you something about big dick energy.
Go for it.
Much like Shiva, big dick energy doesn't care about your size. It doesn't care about your gender. It just cares about how much energy is coming off that big dick of yours. So, out of everyone here, Shorty had the biggest and the biggest heart. And if this isn't symbolism, I don't know what is.
Go for it.
Shorty grabs a flaming torch off a wall and starts burning the Thuggees with it.
Jesus.
He gets to Jones, and do you know what's more powerful than the black sleep, John?
What's more powerful than the black sleep, Leslie?
The love of a small boy.
Aww.
He tells him that he loves him.
Oh.
It didn't work, and then he burns him.
Okay.
He done stab him with that big dick energy. And it turns out, if you're enough pain, it snaps you out of it.
Oh, cool. Good to know.
Shorty gets captured. These people are so shit at not getting captured. But you know what, John?
What, Leslie?
Jones is feeling it.
Ooh, is it throbbing?
It's deep, John. It's gorging his veins. It's big dick energy. Jones gets up and he tells the guards to give Shorty to him and gives him a wink. And so he knows it's going to be okay. And they clean house. Well, clean temple. Jones, he throws out some old-fashioned sluggaroos. You know when old-timey people punch people and it sounded like a gun?
Yeah.
You watch those old Rocky Balboa matches and every time they punch each other it sounds like somebody slamming a piece of metal into a side of beef? Whatever happened? How come, like, if I give a sluggaroo, it's just going to sound like...
I don't want to criticize your big dick energy, sir, but it might be more to do with that.
Okay, he's giving out sluggaroos for free,
Yeah.
and Shorty's throwing out roundhouse kicks. And lucky for Shorty, his kicks are probably around the same areas where people's dicks are. And thankfully, there's a huge lava pit nearby, and Jones throws a bunch of thuggies into it. Jones goes for Molaran, who escapes via a trapdoor. At this point, everyone's forgotten about Willie.
Yeah, I was going to say, where is Willie?
Well, she gets lowered, but not enough to hit the lava, and she's passed out in a cage.
Where's that big Willie energy?
Oh, yeah. Jones runs to the large wooden wheel that controls a winch that moves the cage up and down, and it's got like large handles, so he gets her out of harm's way. But who have we forgotten about?
I can't keep... It's like Game of Thrones. I can't keep up with all the characters.
Prime Minister Chatala.
Getting his ass kicked?
Yes. So Jones gives him a sluggaroo.
That one's a freebie.
Punches him so hard that he falls up onto the wheel, goes over it, and gets crushed by the handles. Jones moves his body because he has to get Willie up and out into safety. Chatterley fucks off, and Jones grabs the stones and places them in a side bag, and they get out of this temple. And when I say they get out, they're all getting out.
Yeah.
Jones goes down to the main floor of the mining operation. And let me tell you, his BDE levels are fucking through the roof. And this isn't a sophisticated operation. There's only a couple of guards that have a couple of set of keys. And I imagine he is so pumped at this point. Like, these guards try to hit him, but he's like got a force field of BDE. And these people like, why can't I hit him? And so it's actually really not that difficult to free these hundreds and hundreds of
Like
kids.
they haven't thought out their security very well.
Well, what? They're all kids. Like, they're all broken spirits.
It's because they've never met Short Round.
Yeah, exactly. So despite being much smaller, the kids outnumber the guards. But in order to get back to the palace, they have to cross a lava pit. They make a makeshift bridge. The kids cross, but when it comes time to Shorty to cross, the bridge burns just from the heat, and they get Shorty before he falls into lava. It's okay. That's at this point, being sad about Shorty being in danger, it feels mute. Oh, what's that, John? Oh, did that 8-bit music change? Do you hear those sirens? What's that? Now time for a bus battle?
Whoa!
So-
People in the background waving or shaking their fists or, hey, 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 hey.
Jones now has to fight that fucking cunt, the chief guard. We can assume he has enough BDE that he's leveled up. But will it be enough? Of course not. This guy's fucking huge. Jones actually has this weird history of accidentally getting in fights with big dudes. His other famous fight was on a runway with a Nazi that inadvertently got torn to shreds by the propeller of a plane.
Well, to be fair, then he didn't win that fight then, did he?
Well, he doesn't quite win this one either.
Oh, okay.
But who's alive, John? Who's alive?
That is true. That is true.
And once again, Jones comes up a little short. But...
What?
True hero in the story.
Oh, the true hero of the story, Short Round.
Strikes again.
Yeah!
And is easily deflected. Okay, to make matters worse, the Maharaja brings out the Kraita and starts attacking Jones. Both Jones and the chieftain are now fighting on a conveyor belt that's leading into a rock crusher, which is a large rock cylinder. Shorty sees what the Maharaja is doing and stops him. Now, John, are you thinking, finally, Shorty can have a fair fight?
Yeah.
Willie doesn't.
Oh.
He beats the ever-living shit out of that kid.
Yeah!
It's not a fair fight. He is definitely the definitive winner.
That's what happens when you race on the streets.
I don't think that Maharaja even gets a punch in.
Nah.
After taking the dagger out of the heart of the voodoo doll, Jones follows suits. And the chief guard ends up dying when he robes gets caught under the rock crusher.
Ooh.
But you know what? Short round.
The true hero of the story.
He decides in all his grace and kindness not to kill the Maharaja and cause an international incident.
That's true. Well, I mean, look, you've already got a dead prime minister. We don't want to start bringing the Maharajas into it as well.
Well, do we? Put a pin in that one. He works out he's a victim of the black sleep and snaps him out of it. And in kind, the Maharaja tells them which mine tunnel to take to get out.
Excellent.
They all jump into a minecart and then immediately take the wrong tunnel.
Brilliant.
Henry Jones, despite going on countless adventures, doesn't seem like to be a very good adventurer. And then they're followed by several minecarts of thuggees. And Willie describes these minecarts like they're a roller coaster ride. They weren't safe in the slightest. Parts of the track are broken out. And at one point, they take a corner and almost fall into lava. At one point, there's thuggees on an adjacent track, and they grab Short Round, and they're grabbing him.
Sounds like quite an adventure.
Oh, well, John.
Leslie.
I hope you don't have a peanut allergy. Because Mola Ram, he's gone fucking nuts here, mate.
Jesus wept.
He forces the thuggees to take out their main water supply. Mm-hmm. They are flooding this place. They are out. So after eliminating all the threats, Jones wants to slow down the cart because they might be getting to the end of the track, and they try to stop it, but the brake snaps, so Jones has to get out of the cart and stop it with his foot. They only have a second before they're met by a wall of water.
Oh.
They run through several tunnels, but this water keeps on following them. And they end up going through an opening on the side of a fucking cliff.
Jeez.
It's okay. Below them is only that crocodile-infested water.
Hey, remember that one?
And with a bit of trouble, they're able to climb off and to a suspension bridge that will take them across the river. Willie and Shorty get there first, as Jones was in a harder position. He kind of had to climb up and over. On the way there, he manages to disarm a thuggee and take his sword. The remaining thuggee block off both sides of the bridge. So, with not a lot of options, what do you do?
Give up, put your hands up, just leave it, Just become one of them, sleep with their women,
No, John, no.
No?
He threatens to throw the stones over.
Ooh.
And Mola Ram is like, oh, is that your big dick energy? Here's a big flappy dick. I'm going to fucking hit it on this bridge. Throw it over. I'll just get them later.
Yeah.
So, with thuggies on both sides, Jones tells Shorty in Mandarin what's he got to do. And it's not going to be good. He tells Willie, hang on, lady. We're going for a ride. Dr. Henry Jones is a man with no options. It's been a hard couple of days. He tells Mola Ram, prepare to meet Kali in hell before cutting the rope of the suspension bridge, killing most of the thugs. Well, actually, Hindus have no concept of hell? Sorry,
Put down that tweet, sir.
So the bridge breaks in two, but thankfully the wooden slats are far apart, they can climb up. So they get in a situation where essentially Willie and Short Round are at the top of the bridge, blocking off Mola Ram, so he can't get up. And Mola Ram and Jones are fighting at the bottom, and Mola Ram attempts to rip out his heart.
Jeez.
And, this is it. It just won't stop for them. And you have to feel that maybe the entire history of the universe has been leading up to this point. From the birth of Shiva to the leprosy or other physical ailments.
You don't want to touch leprosy.
Everything that led him up to be an archaeologist, to be in Shanghai, to be in this spot right here, right now. It's Kali and Shiva on the battlefield again. It's two of the greatest forces in the world coming together head to head. This is the moment where the gods of the universe has to decide what is fucking more powerful, big dick energy or flappy dick energy. It all comes down to this. It's like, are you going to be hitting somebody in the face with your dick, or are you going to be a proud, strong, confident dick, John?
Oh, it's like Big Fight 1 all over again.
You would have to think in this moment, he thinks about everything they've gone through. The fact that he has avoided death in Shanghai because of Willie. He avoided death in the temple because of Short Round. And he avoided death from the plane because of Shiva. And possibly, just fucking possibly, that Shiva met him to be here in this position to help these people that no one will ever fucking know about. Because it is just the will of Shiva. You can be a fucking British soldier and Shiva can work through you to eradicate a 600-year-old cult, because anyone can worship Shiva and Shiva can work through anyone. And it could be destiny. And out of respect for Shiva, he's got a problem. He can't kill Mola Ram because Shiva isn't into death. He's not into killing. That isn't who this god is. So he does the only thing he can do. He's opening up to all that big dick energy. Boom! And this big dick energy tells him to do one thing, and that is to tell the fucking truth. That Mola Ram has betrayed Shiva, that he believed in Shiva, and he's betrayed them. And when he's doing it, he's talking in English, he's talking in Hindi. And Shiva pours his energy into these rocks that just don't glow, but burn through Jones's bag. And, you know, Shiva's giving Mola Ram one last chance to turn away. He either can let these rocks drop to the bottom, and these rocks will probably find their way back to the village, because that's the will of Shiva, or Mola Ram can catch it and live with the fucking consequences. And Mola Ram, despite being in Hinduism his entire life and having no understanding of any of its transcendental truth, but Indy catches the stone, which supernaturally is now cool. But we still have an issue, John.
What's the issue, Leslie?
The thuggies are still firing bows and arrows at... Oh, but it's okay. The Maharaja have told the British, and they turn up to do what they do best. Shoot people who have inferior weapons than them.
Hey, my friend, we built out an empire about this, okay?
Was that...
Have you ever been attacked by a sharp mango? No, you have not, sir.
They return the children and the stone to the village. Jones understands it has greater meaning and power to these people than it ever would in a museum. Now, what happened to everyone?
Oh, here we go.
Tatala fled Peacock Palace with a large amount of stolen treasure.
Of course.
And the British decided to keep an eye on him just in case he tries to establish another Kali temple. Mola Ram! Following his demise, people searched the river and found no signs of his body. That's because he was eaten by crocodiles.
Solve that one.
But rumors began to circulate that his body had disappeared from the river. Despite statements from the British that the high priest was dead, they were unable to provide any evidence of it, moving to punish those who publicly said otherwise.
Just a smiling, full-looking crocodile going, I don't know where he went. I put him down the river.
The Maharaja also publicly decreed that Mola Ram was dead and offered a reward of $100 to anyone who bring proof that he wasn't. But then stories circulated that Mola Ram was actually haunting the ruins of the temples. And the Maharaja and the British did not squash those rumors because it just ensured people wouldn't go to that place.
Best way to keep people away, really.
Willie Scott, despite writing an autobiography that no one really read the bits that weren't the part where she went to India, there was never a second volume ever published. Jones, how can I say this? He that fuckboy. Like, they both knew what it was. It wasn't ever going to last. And he gets in and he gets out. But they remained friends, and he kept a photo of her in his living room. And there's also rumors that she ended up marrying a famous director. Short Round. Jones dropped him back off to China and said, "Smell you later."
Oh, no!
No, of course he didn't.
Oh.
He brought him back to the United States where he paid for his schooling.
Oh, bless him. That's really nice. I mean, that's considering like the problems he had with his own father. I think that's really kind of sweet that he sort of taken on this kid. And just, I'm going to look after you. I'm going to teach you poker, get you with some dangerous cults, but I am going to pay for education.
And because he was a good father figure, he was like,
yeah,
no more adventures until you're older.
Just settle down, boy. Settle down.
And they did go in heaps of adventures together. And in at least one, they found the remains of a Bigfoot and a weird UFO ship. Whatever happened to the Eye of the Peacock?
Oh, I don't know.
Indian Shorty was still searching for it up until 1974, where Shorty had a clue that it might have been in Hawaii. Did they ever find it? Don't know. Remember the Cross of Colorado?
All those days ago, yeah?
Jones ends up getting it off Panama Hat in 1938 after much misadventure. He presented the cross to his best buddy, Marcus Brody, who felt it should be given a place of honor in the Spanish collection in a museum.
Of course.
So, what happened to Dr. Jones? Fuck. He went on to write several books about archaeology, and at some point between 1972 and 1999, he suffered a wound in his right eye, which required him to wear an eye patch. In the late 50s, I mentioned before, he ended up marrying Marion Ravenwood, and he was reunited with a son he didn't know about. He eventually fathered a daughter, and had grandchildren, Spike, Lucy, and the mother of his two great-grandchildren, Annie and Harry. In 1992, Jones was living in upstate New York with his daughter and grandchildren and his cat, Henry. Though his family questioned his fitness to live independently, Jones continued to travel and drive and give lectures around the world.
Not giving a shit.
In addition, Jones developed a late fascination for daytime soap operas.
Oh, it's not what I kind of imagined, but yeah, lovely.
After nearly a century's worth of life experience, he enjoyed retelling stories over years to anyone that would listen to him.
Bless.
And towards the end of life, it was primarily Phil Donahue on his talk show.
Hey, you got to do that. You got to go when the money pays.
In 1992, he passed away peacefully.
Oh, bless.
The end.
The end.
Oh, is it?
Oh, good God.
Okay, John.
Leslie.
Whatever happened to Shiva and Kali?
God damn it.
If we see it with our ordinary eyes, we see them to be separate. But if we see them with our inner eyes, we see that they are together.